Welcome, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being on for day 3 of the My Tehillim Time Jewish Women's Virtual Festival that's going to be taking place from now all the way through Cheshvan, featuring incredible women speakers like our amazing speaker today, Rabbanit Shani Taragin, who I'll be introducing in just a moment. Just a couple of quick announcements before we get straight to it. First and foremost, I want to just give a thank you to Naomi Journo from Naomi's Uplifting Events, and of course to all of our incredible speakers. And above all, as I always say, the top thank you goes to HASHEM, who's the CEO, and I just happen to work for him. So I'm very, very, very proud to be here on day 3, and I want to thank you guys for joining and all of the incredible messages that you've been sending my way. For those of you that it's their first night, please know that you can see the entire agenda with all of the speakers. You'll be able to see all of the speakers on abrahamslegacy.com/sign up. There you'll see the agenda. You'll also have the opportunity to submit your My Tehillim Time story to be entered in for a chance to win our Netillah cup, 100% pure copper Netillah cup. We are going to be raffling this off tonight. So make sure that you stay on. After Shani's amazing talk, we are then going to be doing a Tehillim read together, followed by the raffle. More information as well will come regarding the concert, the physical concert we'll be doing in Jerusalem, Bezrat Hashem, with women, featuring women singers that will also be live streamed. More details on that. That is being run with Annie Ornstein from Spotlight on Women, and I want to give her a shout out as well. For those of you that are joining from your computer, you can grab your cell phones and download already the Abraham's Legacy app. It's a free app available for iOS and Android that will allow us, at the end of Shani's talk, will allow us to read Tehillim in unison. Just so that you know, yesterday we almost completed 2 books in a period of 6 minutes, and we had 6 countries joining us. That's an incredible power. And this entire event is all about unifying and uniting women through the power of tefillah, through the power of Tehillim, to understand and unleash its ability to truly transform our lives and make it into a lifestyle, as we heard yesterday from Rivka Siegel. So without further ado, I'm very excited to introduce our speaker, Shani Taragin. And I just want to say just a few words about Shani. First and foremost, I've had the opportunity to meet Shani. Shani, I think it was about a couple of years ago. And ever since then, I've been really just one of her biggest fans. She is such an incredible soul. And I don't know anybody, I've not met anybody that doesn't fall in love with her from the moment that they meet her. She's the educational director of Matan, Tanakh Teachers Education Program, and of the Morot Lahalacha program in Matan, Renana. And she serves on the advisory committee for the Mizrahi Olami Shalhevet program for Shalichim, and lectures throughout Israel and North America on topics of Tanakh, Jewish education, and Jewish law. She's also a senior lecturer in Matan and is the curriculum coordinator for the Matan B'nai Akiva program. In addition, Shani is a Ramit Tanakh in Midreshet Lindenbaum, and teaches at Migdal Oz, the women's Beit Midrash of Efrat and Gush Etzion, and in Matan Ramat Shiloh. And together with her husband Reuven, she serves as Rosh Beit Midrash for the Beit Midrash program in Machane Moshava, Pennsylvania during the summer, and as educational director of Mizrahi Olami. And I have to just tell you, again, like I said, she is a powerhouse of a woman. So without further ado, I give you Rabbanit Shani Taragin. Shani, please take it away. Thank you so much for being here. It's an honor.
Orly, thank you. And really, on behalf of all the women here, we want to thank you and Abraham's Legacy for the opportunity not only to make a Tehillim more meaningful for us, but certainly in these days of Chodesh Elul, this time period of Dirshu Hashem Matzo, Kra'u Bioto Karov, the time where we're trying to search for HaKadosh Baruch Hu even more. On this night, or Liyud Zayin Elul, right in the middle of Elul, after 3 days. This is the 3rd day, as we see throughout Tanakh, 3 days of mental deliberation. When all of you who are debating, should we continue with this? This is the 3rd day, the 3rd night, where we're supposed to take upon ourselves by now the decision, Be'ezrat Hashem, to continue with Tehillim. And tonight, I have the very special zchut of being able to share with you a few thoughts as to how we can find a personal connection to Tehillim, as you all see on behalf of Abraham's Legacy and My Tehillim Time, this beautiful Jewish Women's Virtual Festival, to not only accompany us to the Yamim Noraim, but through the month of Cheshvan. And the question really is, why is it that Tehillim speaks to us? Why is it that if we look at the 220 biblical manuscripts that were found in the Qumran caves, why is it that Tehillim is most represented? So much so that maybe some of these manuscripts were, as we find today, really part of a Siddur, of ancient liturgy. And the answer seems to be that the reason for the beloved nature of Tehillim is because we're all meant to be able to connect to these words. Because if most of Tanakh is God's message to us, to humans, then Tehillim is really the forum for human expression of our religious experience, one that we share certainly with Hakadosh Baruch Hu, and that's why we find people at the Kotel grasping on to their tear-stained Sifrei Tehillim. But I think that part of the appeal is also the broad range of human emotions as part of this religious expression. And therefore, one could really summarize this entire shir by saying that we all, at some stage in our lives, are going to find a personal connection to Tehillim, either through the expressions of joy or sadness, or awe, of yearning, of fear, of despair, of at times feeling very far from a spiritual state, and at times very close. And therefore, if we look and we open Tehillim, we see already, as you see from the first source in Midrash Tehillim, that throughout Sefer Tehillim, Rabbi Yudin b'Shem Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Kol Masha Amar David b'Sifro, Kenegdo u'Keneged Kol Yisrael u'Keneged Kol Ha'itim Amaro. You'll find something in every single mizmor that speaks to you, the individual, but also that speaks collectively to all of Am Yisrael. And even if it's placed in the time period of David, albeit we know Chazal tell us in Masechet Bava Batra that David wrote Tehillim together with 10 Zkenim throughout the generations, starting from Adam Harishon through Moshe Rabbeinu alav hashalom. And what Chazal are ultimately telling us is that these are timeless expressions. These are expressions of the human condition. And therefore, each and every mizmor, and I'm sure that as more and more stories are being submitted to the wonderful website, I'm sure that you're all gaining some sense of how at different stages in our lives, different experiences we find, and I have personal stories of this as well, where in the Tehillim that you read that day, all of a sudden it sheds light on your experience. All of a sudden you mentioned, wow, the beauty of the Torah is more yutet, that is literally dancing and shining like the sun, like the moon. And sure enough, you open up to the words of Tehillim, and at the same time see the beautiful sun shining outside while you're learning a page of Tanakh and a story, or maybe, in fact, learning a Mizmor Tehillim. And yet, what we find is that it's not just individual mizmorim that we can certainly apply to every stage or every emotion, every human expression. We also find that if we understand the structure of a Sefer more, and I'm sure that many of you who have learned Tanakh have seen that the structure helps highlight the significance. And definitely when it comes to Sefer Tehillim, albeit we can definitely learn Sefer Tehillim and find a personal connection to every single mizmor at different stages. Sometimes I remember when I was 10 years old, and I was woken up in the middle of the night by my parents who said, we're all going to be saying Mizmorei Tehillim now because Saba is undergoing an emergency heart operation. And I remember opening up Tehillim and reading Mizmorei Halil. We divided it up amongst the different family members. And I had Mizmor Kuf Memhei to Kuf Nun Mamash, the very end of Sefer Tehillim, all about praises of Hashem. But all I wanted to do was cry. And I was wondering, this isn't really what I'm feeling right now. And therefore, even though there are Tehillim that one could say match up with different experiences that we're enduring at different stages of our lives, there also are broader themes. And therefore, if we're able to appreciate that there definitely is, as we see from the second source, a deliberate organization of these Mizmorei Tehillim, and as Chazal are going to highlight, then maybe if we understand the broader themes of Tehillim, then we can appreciate an even deeper connection. In the Dat Mikra, Introduction to Sefer Tehillim, authored by Amos Chacham, he says that really all of Tehillim was meant to be Sefer Tefillot Livnei Yisrael. And just as there are different tefillot, different expressions of our prayers, of our liturgy to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that at times we feel more, at times perhaps we feel less. He says, nonetheless, these are meant to be expressions to Hashem on behalf of Am Yisrael, B'hu kolel tefillot l'chol eit. And this is again timeless, both for the community and for the individual, whether it be an Eit Sarah, whether it be hodaya, whether it be a time of suffering, whether it be a time of thanksgiving, whether it be a time of salvation, whether it be a time of joy. And therefore, even if there are particular ktoviot, what are called the expositions, as we see here, that match up with the life and times of David, basically, when you can relate to a story, when you go back to Tanakh and you understand the story of David in a state of crisis, when Natan HaNavi comes to rebuke him for the terrible sin of Bathsheba, when you come and you understand the anxiety of David when Doeg ha-Edomi is going to propose that Achimelech, the Kohen, had facilitated David's escape that ultimately is going to lead to the massacre of all the priests in Nov, or you hear about David in hiding when Shaul comes to him to the area of Midbar Zif. All of this is meant to elicit an emotional response, and that's what poetry does. And the question is, how do we understand this connection? So obviously, again, every mizmor we're supposed to appreciate the poetic devices that are employed, whether it's the milim anchot, the repetitive words, whether it's going to be onomatopoeia, whether it's going to be anadiplosis, the succession of themes. The more of the poetry that we can understand, the more of the emotional connection we're naturally going to feel. But the Midrash Tehillim tells us that each one of the Sfarim of Tehillim actually has a different theme. As the Midrash compares beautifully the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu to the Torah really of David and Sefer Tehillim, it tells us that Moshe gave Bnei Yisrael 5 different books of Torah, and we know that Bereshit has a different theme than Shmot, and that's different than Vayikra, Bamidbar, and Devarim. So too, Kenegdam Natan Lahem David Sefer Tehillim. Not only is this beautiful midrash elucidating the importance of Tehillim, almost as parallel to Chamisha Chumshei Torah, but it's teaching us that it is parallel. If Chamisha Chumshei Torah is Hashem speaking to us, then Tehillim is we're speaking to Hashem. And Yeshbo Chamisha Sfarim. And similarly to the works of the Torah, each one of the Sfarim has its own independent theme. And if we can relate to these themes, then maybe we can understand how to connect, not necessarily to every single mizmor at every time, but now we'll know where to turn when we feel a certain experience, when we want to relate to HaKadosh Baruch Hu on a certain emotional level. And therefore, the best way really to connect to Tehillim is to understand not just the individual mizmorim, but the broader structure. So that's what we're going to learn about right now as we take a look at Tehillim and see these 5 sections, each one which is very clearly depicted with what's known as a doxology, which is a praise of Hashem at the end. So one can even notice this, even had I not written out the 5 books and how they're divided, one can easily see the distinction by appreciating the ends of each one of these books of Mizmorim with a doxology, with a beautiful praise of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, whether it be Baruch Hashem La'olam, Amen V'Amen. And we're not surprised to find some type of organization to each one of these Sfarim, because even within Tehillim, we find various collections, we find various kvatzim, the kvatzim of the Shirei HaMa'alot, which give us a sense of what it was like to greet people in the Beit HaMikdash, the Mizmorim of Bnei Korach, the Mizmorei Hallel. So each one of these Sfarim, definitely its own collection. And now we're going to explore what each one of these collections, in fact, is coming to teach us. So as you see, Baruch Hashem Elokei Yisrael min haolam, amen v'amen, Baruch Shem kvodo la'olam v'yimalei kvodo, each one ending with praise, so much so that most of the Parshanim understand that even though there are going to be different themes, the ultimate idea behind Tehillim is that these are words of praise that were offered, particularly in the Beit HaMikdash. I like to even call them the 150 top songs of Jewish history that were sung together, and everyone knew what these songs were. And our challenge is to be able not just to know them and not just to sing them and recite them, as we're going to do in just a few moments, but ultimately to understand and to be able to connect to them. So we're going to begin with the very first of the books, with not only Mizmor Aleph, but basically understanding the theme from Mizmor Aleph through Mizmor Mem Aleph. Throughout this Sefer, this is where we find David HaMelech mentions more than in any of the other subsequent Sfarim of Tehillim. This is about David's individual quest for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We've been reciting Mizmor Zayin every day, twice a day, from Elul all the way through Shmini Atzeret, and we're going to hear that we're going to hear about this quest of seeking God as an individual. We hear the words of Ashrei, who is the lucky one, maskil, the one who is truly seeking after God. David is described throughout the entire first Sefer of Tehillim as an individual who's aspiring for a life of meaning. And therefore, how can one not connect to this? This is our existential question, namely, what are we here for? David is expressing and attempting to create life infused with religious meaning wherein God is in his life. And therefore, anytime, I would argue, anytime we're looking for HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our lives, anytime we really have that spark of wanting to become closer to Hashem, seeking and asking for ourselves, really, et panacha Hashem avakesh. Seeking out the face of God, turn to book 1, turn to Mizmorim 1 through 41, which will then bring us, after speaking about what it is that man is chafetz. That's one of the milim manchot throughout the first view, both at the beginning and the end. Perek Mem repeats many of the ideas of Perek Aleph of lasot ritzon Hashem, vechafatzti, desiring a life infused with God. And then that brings us to a much more national level. The second book, as we see, beginning with Mizmor Membet from 42 to 72, is more David's communal role as leader. And when he's leader, expressing ideas much more on a national level, no longer the individual seeking God, but this is where we find that he's less confident when it comes to his relationship with God. And very often we feel this as well, somewhat so that if we look at some of the Mizmorim, the most famous being Mizmor Nun Aleph, Bevo Elav Natan Hanabi, when Natan comes and rebukes David for Bathsheba, this is exactly where David recognizes, wait a second, as much as I seek a relationship with God, as much as I want a relationship with God, wait a second, there are negative effects on that relationship. And I think that we all feel. Unfortunately, in the month of Elul, maybe we think about it all the more, of all the rifts that we have created between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And sometimes these iniquities, sometimes our misdemeanors get the better of us. Sometimes they really create a tremendous level of insecurity. And that's really what book 2 is all about, the insecurities in our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, anytime we're feeling any aspect of insecurity, someone isn't feeling well, we don't know what, there's a pandemic out there, what's going to be this year. That's exactly what the second sefer, what these mizmorim are really all about. They speak about al tashlicheni milfanecha ruach katshacha al tikach mimeni. This is how those who have started to say slichot and starting this Motzei Shabbat, we incorporate so many of these mizmorim of book 2 into our slichot, our petitioning to Hashem. Basically, David's first response is, don't take your ruach away. Remember that ruach that you took from Shaul and you gave to me. I'm afraid that you're going to take that away. I want a life infused with you, God, and we all do. And this is our petition to Hashem. Hashem, please do not take that potential away from us. Al tashlichini. And the very last mizmorim end as well with a similar terminology of al tashlichini le'et zikna. The same ideas that we say throughout the slichot, throughout our petitioning to Hashem. David questions his relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Does Hashem really want him as king? And we ask ourselves this question all the time. Does Hashem really want our tshuva? Does Hashem really want sometimes even our artificial or superficial activities? Is God going to remain with us even when at times we seem to turn away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu? And that's really what not only we say in our slichot, but these slichot of al tashlicheni come from the Sefer of Tehillim, and the very end, Mizmor 72, Ayin Bet, is basically the answer to that, which begins with Mizmor Lishlomo, the Tikkun. We, even as we're insecure deep down in the recesses of our hearts and our minds, we connect to Tehillim because we know that that relationship is always going to be there, that it's going to be continuous, that even though David thought that his malchut, he doesn't deserve to be a leader after he sinned, Hashem tells him, no, your malchut is going to continue. This is going to be a dynasty. The ideal state of a continuity, tshuva, has been accepted. This is a beautiful, beautiful sefer for us to think about, not only during this time, but anytime we wonder whether or not we're going to be pardoned by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this really is ideal leadership, knowing that we can't always remain on an ossified statue of petrified piety all the time, but to know that we may, in fact, sometimes sin, but we can always repair that. And the idea of ideal leadership and dynasty and continuity is what consoles us. Book 3 basically creates the reality. tells us that even the dynasty doesn't always live up to that ideal. And therefore, book three is the most difficult, not only with regard to individual Mizmorim, but in every aspect. It talks about the Chorban of the Beit HaMikdash, the destruction of Yerushalayim. It talks about the crash in reality. It talks about all of our Spekot. So this is the book where we find in that Ibn Ezra even questions whether or not, one, he talks about those that have a very difficult time saying this Mizmor, because it's about how, on one hand, God promises that there's going to be continuity, but then he destroys the Beit HaMikdash, and then there isn't any continuity of Malchut Beit David. Then it seems that God casts us aside. This is where crisis hits. You've rejected. So many different expressions of anger here. This is when we really feel very distant from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is when book three very much speaks to us. This is how we connect. We ask, wait a second. On one hand, we know that Hashem is faithful, and that's why the key words throughout this book are chesed v'yamet, chesed v'yamunah, the loyalty, the faithfulness of God. And we ask, but Hashem, how can you be faithful? You make promises, but it seems that then you profane the crown of David. Then you shortened his life. Then there's an end to the Beit HaMikdash. So till when are we going to be abandoned? Crisis emerges. And therefore, this Sefer speaks particularly when we're in a state of crisis. And to a certain degree, we're supposed to connect, obviously, to this aspect of reality. And if some of you are wondering, can we turn to God in this state of crisis? That's exactly what Iyov, Moshe Rabbeinu, Yirmiyahu Hanavi does. Again, they all speak to God. God, how can you cast us off? And therefore, we then continue to book four. Book four speaks really of the existential questions of life, of the brevity of man's life, of man being transient. And the answer to all of our crises is that whatever we see is really just in an ephemeral state. It's really like the malchut. It's really like the leadership of mortal man that is so transient, that is so effervescent, that is only going to be here for a temporary amount of time. And therefore, we don't always see not only the big picture, but man doesn't live in an everlasting way. Rather, God is eternal. This Sefer, the entire book four, and all these Mizmorim talk about eternality that may have been taken away from David HaMelech, but will never ever be taken away from God. And this is the difference between divine kingship and human kingship. The Davidic dynasty didn't remain eternal because of God's anger, because there was a problem. Again, not with Hashem's promises, but because of people themselves. And therefore, this Sefer teaches us to find eternality in God and not in human institutions. The words of Me'olam Ata Hashem Melech appear over and over again. These are some of the Mizmorim of Kabbalat Shabbat that we definitely feel on Shabbat when we take a step away from our own creations and we recognize the kingship of Hashem and our faithfulness in Hashem. And even though this comes after the most difficult Sefer, that's exactly what the fourth Sefer is all about. We connect to the idea of being able to repair on a national level a relationship with God, not just when we sin, but particularly in the aftermath of crisis, when we most feel the absence of God. And this perhaps is the most beautiful then of, I would say, the continuity of one Sefer to the next, because the resolution comes in book five. Once we recognize God's eternal nature, then we have no choice really other than to praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, the entire end of Tehillim is replete with praises of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, beginning with Kuf Zayin 107, Hodu Lashem Kitov Ki Leolam Chaso. This is the story, basically. Sefer Tehillim is a story that we connect to, both individually and nationally. This is our connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu from a human perspective, the hopeful beginnings of a people who seek a relationship with Hashem. Every time we want to saturate our lives with meaning, we begin with book one. And then we realize that, yes, there are times of crisis, but then there's tshuva and forgiveness. And even then, when there may be exile, there's a lack of comprehension. And when we finally reach that in book four, the ability to prepare the path for redemption and continuity comes when we realize the eternal nature of God, which then we can't help but to praise Hashem. This is exactly how we connect then to every different experience that we endure, both as individual people and definitely as a nation, certainly during these days of Yamim Noraim, as an individual and as a community. Dirshu Hashem Bihi Matzo. This is our opportunity to search, to begin with the very beginnings of Mizmorei Tehillim, to start off by saying them in beginning our search for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, kra'u bioto karov, to seek the panim of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so that be'ezrat Hashem, by the time that we all finish, not only going through these vicissitudes of life together, but understand how to connect to them, which is really the basis of our meaning in this world. That's what Tehillim is, a synopsis of our raison d'etre, a synopsis of what we're really here as Avdei Hashem all about to bring us from this time of seeking Hashem out, and even when there may be rupture, to know that there's repair. And that's why it's so beautiful that these Mizmorim will now accompany us in an extremely meaningful way through Sukkot, where by the time we get to Sukkot, we'll hopefully be able to appreciate much more in depth how to connect, especially to Book 5, to praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu as individuals and as a community. And I just want to share, I know the time is up, and I just want to share one of my favorite Mizmorei Tehillim, which ironically is at the very end of of Book 5, Mizmor Kuf Lamed 139, which on one hand asks these questions of God, really, you're following me around all day. How can I run away from God? And that's exactly what we realize in the end. We don't want to run away from God. Mizmorei Tehillim teach us that Hashem doesn't run away from us. And what a zchut, what a privilege it is then to recognize that we have God looking out for us as individuals and as a community. And therefore, the Mishorer who's complaining about God's omniscience at the beginning of the Mizmor realizes, Hashem, again, I always want you to accompany me. And with that, we always take our Sefer Tehillim in hand. And that's how we connect to every day of our lives, every state of our lives, and Be'ezrat Hashem, ultimately to be able to sing as a community, which is what we're going to do right now as we recite Sefer Tehillim together.
Ah, Shani, I want to thank you so much for your words. There's so many amazing things that you shared here. And I could imagine, I know some of you are putting messages here on the chat, just so that you know, if you want to go back to the talk, because there are so many nuggets of wisdom here. I love the comparison that you made and taking us through the books. You'll have the opportunity to also to go back to the talk again. I'm going to be uploading this to the Abraham's Legacy YouTube channel, so you'll be able to take this in even more so. So thank you so much for sharing. Guys, we're going to now joining together with Rabbanit Taragin. We're going to read Tehillim through the Abraham's Legacy app. We're going to show a quick video for those of you that may not have it. It'll explain to you how to get it, but you can take out your cell phone, download Abraham's Legacy, whether it be on iOS or Android, and we're going to get started right now. I just want to mention that this app is in memory of my grandfather, Avraham ben Polin, to keep his name in our mind. And another person also dedicated a chapter of Tehillim just yesterday after our talk for Solomon ben Sarah, Leilui Nishmat Solomon ben Sarah. So I just want to mention these names. Here we go. We're going to read together, and then we'll be able to take a couple of questions and do the raffle. On behalf of Abraham's Legacy, we are excited to lead you in a Tehillim reading, where each and every one of us, from wherever we are in the world, can easily join in and complete a book of Tehillim in unison within minutes through a very special app called Abraham's Legacy, Tehillim Together, in memory of Avraham ben Polin. To be part of the global Tehillim read happening now, download Abraham's Legacy on your mobile device from the App Store, available for iOS and Android. You can also scan this QR code with your phone. To scan a QR code, simply open the camera on your phone and hold it up to this image. A link will appear on top, which you can click, and it will direct you to download the app. I'll give you all a moment to download the app. Sign in, and in a minute, we will all click on the Start Reading button on the main screen, and each of us will receive a different perek from the Sefer of Tehillim so that we can complete the book and add to the global count. In the top right corner, you can click the icon to switch your language if you like. You'll also be able to see in real time the amount of people reading and countries reading. Don't forget, you'll need to confirm that you've completed the chapter. Let's put a few minutes on the clock to read in unison so that we can unleash the power of our combined tefillah. Tizku l'mitzvot.
רחובות עוד באוויר, עם עייף חובש פצעיו, יושב סופר ימיו, צעקות בושה בכל העיר, דור רוצה תשובה עכשיו, זכאי ולא חייב. בגוף עייף מכישלונות, בלב שבור לחתיכות, נחכה לך שתקבל פנינו. לך קראנו בלילות, ועוד נצעק ברחובות, רחם עלינו אבא, הושיענו, הושיענו. זמן עובר כולם ממהרים, דור מחיש את פעמיו, רוצה הכל עכשיו, שמש בשמיים אפורים, עם בארץ אבותיו, נלחם עוד על חייו. בגוף עייף מכישלונות, בלב שבור לחתיכות, נחכה לך שתקבל פנינו. בגוף עייף מכישלונות, בלב שבור לחתיכות, נחכה לך שתקבל פנינו. לך קראנו בלילות, ועוד נצעק ברחובות, רחם עלינו אבא, הושיענו, הושיענו. הגיע הזמן להתעורר, לעזוב הכל, להתגבר, לשוב הביתה, לא לחפש מקום אחר. הגיע הזמן להשתנות, גם אם פספסנו תחנות, אפשר לרדת, יש רכבת, חזרה לשכונות. הכל אפשר רק אם נרצה, המחפש תמיד מוצא, גם אם הוא נמצא שם הרחק בקצה. דלתות שמיים לא ננעלו, כשהבן קורא הצילו, אבא שבשמיים מגיע אפילו שעשינו משהו רע, הוא מוחל וסולח, מוחל וסולח, מושיט ידו לעזרה, ונותן ברחמיו את הכוח לתקן ולשוב אליו. הזמן להתחרט, אם כבר לברוח אז מאחת, אם כבר לקחת אז לקחת בשביל לתת. וזה הזמן להתקרב, לא לפחד מהכאב, ואם לתת אז כבר לתת מכל הלב. הכל אפשר רק אם נרצה, המחפש תמיד מוצא, גם אם הוא נמצא שם הרחק בקצה. דלתות שמיים לא ננעלו, כשהבן קורא הצילו, אבא שבשמיים מגיע אפילו שעשינו משהו רע, הוא מוחל וסולח, מוחל וסולח, מושיט ידו לעזרה, ונותן ברחמיו את הכוח לתקן ולשוב אליו. שעשינו משהו רע, הוא מוחל וסולח, מוחל וסולח, מושיט ידו לעזרה, ונותן ברחמיו את הכוח לתקן ולשוב אליו. להתעורר, עזוב הכל, יתגבר לשוב הביתה.
We finished one book fully, and we're almost at the end of another book, which is a fantastic thing in 6 minutes. And we had about 30 or so people on from about 5 countries at some point here. Such a small thing that we can do. Each and every one of you have the power to do this, even not on this program, but you can come once a day for just 30 seconds. Click to read one parak, and you're part of completing a book, because we have tens of books being completed on a daily basis, hundreds of books being completed on a weekly basis. Really incredible. I want to thank you so much, Shani, for joining us, really for giving of your heart, from sharing from your soul. You are such a light, and I really appreciate you being here. I know that we're running a little bit late, so we're not going to be able to take questions, unfortunately. But Shani, thank you for being here. And we're going to do the raffle now. Are you guys ready for the raffle? We're going to be raffling off 100% pure copper Netillah cup. This is what it looks like. And it's going to go to one lucky winner. We're going to do it right now. For those of you that may not know how to get into the raffle, it's very easy. You just have to go to abrahamslegacy.com/sign up and register. And then your name will be in the raffle each and every day that we're going to be doing this event. I'll be emailing you, and this way you can send me. You can also then send me your address. This way I'll be able to ship it out to you. All right, so let's share the screen. And I'm going to take us over here to our raffle. I'm going to click on the big wheel. Hopefully you guys can see this. And it's spinning. We got lots of people on here. About 600 people are on here. And the winner for today is, and it's by email address. Let's see here. I'm going to take a quick screenshot. chayahome@gmail.com. Congratulations for winning the Netillah Cup. Amazing, amazing. Guys, I want to just share that tomorrow's speaker, same day, same time, 8:30 p.m. Israel time, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, with Chani Rosengarten. She will be discussing how to find time for Tehillim without excuses. And I think this app definitely makes it easy to not have those excuses. So we're going to be hearing from her tomorrow. If anybody has any questions that they'd like to ask, please feel free. You unmute yourself and you can ask now. I'd be more than happy. Shani would be more than happy to answer any questions. So feel free to unmute yourself. Don't forget, you can share your My Tehillim Time story by using the hashtag My Tehillim Time and posting on your social media. Or you can submit your video directly on our website, abrahamslegacy.com/sign up. So if anybody would have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself now. Until somebody does, I want to, oh yes, go ahead, please.
Arlie, it's Sippy Polak.
Sippy, how are you?
Hi, I was wondering, could there be closed captions during the speech? Because I didn't follow Shani at all, and I didn't get it. Yeah, so I didn't see the option for closed captions.
So what I'm going to be doing at Sippy is, when I'm going to be uploading these, I'm trying to figure out how to do it right now for Zoom. But what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be uploading these to YouTube, and that is where I will be putting the closed captions. But I'm working towards figuring this out. So I want to thank you for bringing this point up. And I'm going to do my very best to make sure that it accommodates you and anybody else. So you'll see it there on YouTube, and I'm working towards getting it on Zoom. So Bezrat Hashem, by next week, we should have that, by the next time that we meet, either tomorrow or the day after, we should have that sorted.
Yashar Koyach. Could I see what Shani, she put on the screen? I joined late, so could you send it to my email or something?
Shani, if you would like to send it, if you have it and you want to upload it here, if you send it to me, I'm happy to also send it out tomorrow. When I send out the email tomorrow for tomorrow's speaker, it'll say that if you are finished, if you missed yesterday's talk, it'll give you the link for it. And I'll also put the link to the PDF that Shani has as well, so that you'll be able to see it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
100%, of course.
I'm blessed. I'm blessing you that you started this. It's such an encouraging thing. I really wanted to get into Tehillim, and this just showed up in Siyata Deshmaya, and I'm so excited. And I hope you're always successful.
Thank you so much. It really, really means a lot. But like I say, Hashem is the CEO. I just happen to work for him. So hopefully he continues to let me work for him and doesn't fire me anytime soon. Otherwise, it'll all be continued to be fantastic. I want to tell you guys one thing, okay? Yesterday, so as I mentioned, this is a memory of my grandfather, okay? Avraham ben Polin. And I told the story, and if you haven't heard it, you can hear it from the first days. I'm not going to tell it right now. But yesterday I called my grandmother. Now my grandmother doesn't read Hebrew, okay? And she grew up not so super, religious or necessarily so super connected. But seeing me reading Tehillim when he was ill, and then of course starting this Tehillim app connected her to Tehillim in a very incredible way. The second that she wakes up in the morning, she's on the app. She can't read it in Hebrew, but she reads it in English. It's also in French, and it's her first language is French. And she reads every day. She spends a good 20 minutes reading Tehillim, in memory of my grandfather. And I told her yesterday, I said, Nana, I just want you to know that how many people were on and how much they're enjoying this Tehillim program. And just know that Gramsci's neshama is probably flying in Shamayim. It's like flying. And my grandmother is very emotional. She really, it affected her tremendously, as it does for all of us when we lose somebody. And she was crying, but such a beautiful crying. And she was so happy and she was so touched. And I just want you guys to know just how grateful I am that you're on here. And I share with her the things that some of you have emailed me and the words that you guys have shared. And it's lifted her spirits tremendously. So just from my heart to yours, I just want to say thank you for that, because I can't tell you how much it means. To me, this is like a dream come true. And just like Shani shared, connecting to Tehillim, I mean, this is really applicable to our life in such a tremendous way. And I hope that each and every one of you have that opportunity and that ability to connect even further through this program. So thank you guys so much for being on and for taking the time. We'll hope to see you again tomorrow, 8:30 p.m. Israel time. We'll be doing another raffle, and we'll be reading, of course, again. So thank you again.